What's up, everyone? Welcome to ReVoicing the Future. We are live at the NAMM Show at the Idea Center stage. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hello. This is
Hello.
so exciting. Oh, my gosh. My name is Natalie Morrison. I am one of the co-hosts and co-producers of the podcast. When I am not doing that, I am the Senior Segment Marketing Specialist for Music Education at Yamaha. I do all things music education advocacy, women in music advocacy. I'm a storyteller, content creator, maybe. I don't know.
As I heard, we love a multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, I basically do a lot.
Yeah, and I'm Steph. I'm Natalie's co-host, co-producer. And when I'm not doing that, I am an artist. I am a therapist. I work for Backline, connecting music industry professionals with mental health and wellness resources. Come to us if you need help. That's me.
Hi, I'm Julia Olsen. I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, mix engineer, podcast editor, and professional listener.
Woo!
Yes, she is a professional listener. We love it.
Oh, thanks.
Well, first and foremost, thank you all so much for coming. It is an honor to stand on this stage, and there are so many phenomenal sessions happening at this time, and you chose to be with us for an hour. If you are not familiar with the podcast, ReVoicing the Future is a monthly podcast that aims to provide a platform that celebrates and learns from the women that make up our industry with the ultimate goal of helping to create more equitable gender representation. Woohoo.
Yeah.
We love it. And today, just so you know, this is not a how-to podcast or a podcasting 101 session. Sorry. However, we are going to be talking about our process. We have been doing this for 5.5 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And through the years, we've learned a lot. Our leadership has grown individually, and we hope that you can take away some of the key insights that we've learned over the years. And we want to do that as a way to encourage you to think about how to apply that to your professional and personal lives.
So to kind of set the stage there, we're going to be, again, kind of using the flow of podcasting, how we do it, plus all the wisdom from all the women we've talked to kind of synthesize all of this. To start from the beginning, Nat, can you walk us through kind of how the podcast came to be in the first place, right? Like leadership by starting an idea when you have it.
Well, we started scrappy. We jumped on the DIY train before it became the trend during COVID. And we were basically figuring it out as we go. And to be honest, we were just a couple of girls in our closets with the gear that we had readily available. And today, we are still just a couple of girls recording in our now bigger apartments, but with more sophisticated gear.
We've upgraded.
And I think what makes us authentic is that we aren't in that fancy studio. We're doing it from our safe space. And I think that's what makes us more relatable throughout the conversation, just in my opinion.
And it made me think too about starting almost before you're ready, when there is an idea and the time is there for the idea. If you have enough, you can do it. Dive in and do it, kind of learn as you go, because that's what we did. And also you can do the quality with that. We'll get into how we send audio kits to everybody too, right? You can amend your environment to be comfortable, to be authentic, and still have the quality that you want as you grow into that, right? So, but yeah, start before you're ready, because sometimes the idea is ready before you are.
And you're going to notice the three of us up on the stage, we're not directors. We're not in the C-suite yet. I'm manifesting that for myself one day. But we feel our own journeys are models of how one does this within your own community. And the way that we're defining community is your team, your company, if you're a freelancer, your clients, if you're an educator, your students. And to be frank, we are in a unique position. We've become a repository of the wisdom of the women that we get to interview in our industry. And over time, and given the state of the industry, we pull from our own experiences, making this project, the direct impact we're witnessing, the main reason we do this, the interviewees themselves. So I ask you, as we go on this journey for the next 50 minutes, to think about this question. How can you be a more effective and authentic leader? Yes, we are talking about leadership. But what we're really talking about is initiative and confidence and wielding influence as a way to create more intention and effectiveness. Basically, how to be a compassionate human being.
Woo!
Now, Julia, over the years, you've had this fun little, what I'm calling a mantra to explain your vision of leadership. And I would love for you to kind of share that with everyone.
Thanks, Nat. Yeah. I'm so excited to be standing here with all of you guys. This is such an honor for our team to be here with you, talking about leadership, something that we've been talking about, the three of us, for quite a while now, and now we get to share it with you. And so as we frame this conversation on leadership, I think it's easy for us to go into this frame of mind where we think about, oh, a leader is someone who's so old and someone who has so many employees working for them and someone who's been working for so many decades. And you start to go into this stereotype of what a leader is. And I want to encourage you to not disqualify yourself from leadership based on a stereotype. Because this conversation about leadership is really more about influence. And it's about living your life in a way that people want to come on board and people want to be a part of what you're doing and they want to build that thing that you're a part of. That's what this whole podcast is about. That's really what our industry is about, right? And so let's lean into this conversation of leadership together because we're all included in that. Whether you are very young and you're just starting in the music industry, or you've been here with us for decades, we're all on this journey of leadership together.
I love it. Beautifully said, Julia. All right, so let's get down to the nitty gritty. Steph, can you set the stage for us? Can you walk us through what you and I do with our process? And then Julia, as our professional listener extraordinaire, can you explain what your process is after you get the audio files?
So yeah, to kind of set the stage, 30,000-foot view so you know what we are doing as we do this. As Natalie's co-host, co-producer, host, we're doing the strategy. We are deciding who we are going to talk to, reaching out to them, doing the communications. Once we have that settled, we're doing tons of research on them, crafting the interview. How is that going to go? How do we make them comfortable? Natalie getting into this in detail, but we do a lot of research. And then setting up the recording itself, getting the platform going, hosting the interview. It's usually an hour and a half door to door, 2 hours total. And then exporting that, getting that audio file to Julia when she gets that back, doing the marketing, doing the copywriting, getting that all ready for release till it gets to your earbuds, your AirPods, your headphones, however it gets to you. That's kind of the high level of the co-host, co-producer role. And then talk to us about the podcast posts that you get into.
So when I get the episode, my job really, I say as an audio engineer, is to make things loud and pretty. And so that's definitely included in this podcast. So I get the audio files, I listen through them, I level out all the speakers. I'm really taking a scalpel to the dialogue and making things as cohesive as possible while still representing the people on the podcast well. So loud and pretty. That's what I do as an editor.
Love it. Okay, so we'll just dive into it. We're kind of framing this as these 3 steps, right? Preparation before you do something, storytelling, and then listening. That's kind of how we're framing this whole thing. So to dive into the beginning for Nat here, I know when it's time to prepare for the next episode, this is something you are just diving into and have a really incredible framework for. So can you walk us through what that looks like for you and kind of how we can apply that to extra podcast activities as well?
Extra podcast activities.
Oh,
I like
there
that.
We go. The lessons.
The big thing that I want everyone to take away from this is we treat everyone who comes on champions of their own story. That's really what this boils down to. For the 75-ish minutes that we are together, it is our job to make sure that you feel like a star. And everyone's story is completely unique. For the 71 episodes that we have and counting, I have yet to encounter a story that is exactly the same. We've talked to people who have found their first jobs on Craigslist. We've talked to people who have worked in hospice, who are working in hospice, and not the traditional pathway to get into the music industry. And it all matters, right? Because we all need to find someone that we can relate to, that we can see ourselves in, because maybe we're going to help them one day, right? And to be honest, most of the women that we have interviewed and will continue to interview haven't really been able to tell their story before. This is their first real interview of it just being them. And we carry that weight so incredibly intentionally through the preparation process. And we go into the recording making sure that the experience is as tailored to them as possible. Yes, we have the, oh, tell us your career journey. And then we have a question at the end that wraps it up for everyone. But all the other questions in between are truly about who they are as a person. And our guests are also collaborative members of our team. We believe that if we don't show up for each other, we won't show up authentically for our guests. So we make sure that how we show up together is how we're showing up for our guests as well. And when we send the questions to the guests to make sure that they are comfortable and excited and just really confident in coming on to the podcast, which most of the time they're nervous, but that's what we try to do. We just want to make sure that they feel right at home. And we also do this through a lot of research. We look to see if they have been interviewed before, and we try to find sparks of nuggets of little wisdom that we can pull into the conversation. And one of my favorite comments is, wow, I've never been asked that before. It really makes me think. And it makes us feel validated in that sense that we are recognizing who they are in their career journey. And sometimes they're having this aha moment in the middle of our conversation that is, wow, this was a full circle moment. I never realized that that's how I had to put it together. And it's really powerful. So, do you want to know the real secret? Does everyone want to know the secret?
Yeah.
Tell us,
Okay,
Matt. Tell us what the secret is.
Steph and I are 100% low-key stalking you. I'm just going to be honest. We want to get to know who you are so we kind of have an understanding of who you are before you enter the room, right? Or the video camera situation. And we are looking at those past interviews. We are looking and listening to possible other podcasts that you might have talked to. But do you know what we're also doing? We're talking to your friends and we're talking to your colleagues, because we know that they know something about you that you might not think that we would and should talk about, right? They see you in a different light. And sometimes maybe they have something that they want to know about that person that they're too afraid to ask. So I have so many text conversations of, hey, we're interviewing this person. Anything you want to ask them or anything that I should know in advance? And it makes our guests specifically, like, we're very subtle about it, but they're like, wow, how did you know that? Well, we're talking
People seen the well-rounded, the whole person kind of thing can show up in that way.
And research is so incredibly important, right? Because if we're not doing our research, they know. Everyone knows, right? And then they're not going to be comfortable in that environment as well. And sometimes we just have to be fun about it. I think today, like looping it back to kind of how we can apply this into our leadership, in our meeting culture today, we are kind of untraining the habits that COVID brought in, because we've been so used to, hey, okay, I'm on the Zoom call. Let's just get down to business. Yes, everyone that you work with has a job to do at the end of the day, but it is so important to have that small chit chat in between moments. Check in on how they're doing. Steph, you're going to New York this weekend. Well, I think because of the snow, but that's exciting. Are you excited to go to the city?
Yeah, terrified because of the snow, but there you go. Yeah, I'm from California. I don't own this clothes.
Julia, you just dropped.
Sorry, deviation.
Julia, you just dropped a new single today. Plug.
I did. Woo, woo, woo. Thank you.
Right. Tell me about that. If we take the time to remember that we're all human beings, it's going to connect us deeper with one another because we care. I care. I would hope you care. If you don't, that's fine. But I'm going to make the effort to show that you care. And sometimes we can be a little silly with it too. The first 10 to 15 minutes before the recording starts, we are having those moments with our guests. It's a way for them to drop their wall.
Building rapport.
Building rapport. And we have to do the audio tests, right? Because we need to make sure that everyone sounds good. So why not use that time to be like, hey, how you doing? Like, are you excited? What's going on? And it instantly makes the vibe better, right? Because we're doing this via video, right? And then at the end, what we like to do is we like to ask the question of what brings you joy? Who are you outside of your 9 to 5 or however your job looks like? And every guest that we talk to, they always light up. And I want to share a few examples. Erin Barra, who is the founder of We Make Noise, joined us on the podcast right after her 40th birthday. And her joyful moment is to go and get her nails done. And I'm not talking like just getting like a solid nail color. Like she had the coolest design done
art. Yeah.
For her birthday. And she just lit up. She was so excited to tell us this. And then a couple years ago, we had Krista Gilly on, and she talked about dinosaurs and her love for dinosaurs. And Steph just geeked out with her on that for a good 10, 15 minutes. And it just set and closed the vibe up in a way that made people feel like they were just here to have a conversation with us. They're not being interviewed. They're just showing up to have a conversation with a couple of girls, maybe over coffee. Again, we're doing this via Zoom. And finally, flexibility is key. Now, as someone who is a type A Virgo, being flexible and the ability to pivot doesn't come naturally to me. So this is something that I've been learning a lot, right? When we first started, Steph and I were so prescriptive on who is asking what question. We would literally mark, Natalie asks this, Steph asks this. Now, 5.5 years later, we don't have to do that anymore. We know what makes us spark. We know what brings us joy and the conversations that we want to have. So we just kind of have this secret, silent conversation between the two of us where we can ebb and flow and we can deviate from the questions as we see fit to go down that rabbit hole and to find those nuggets and that spark of conversation. And it's really fun. And sometimes we don't know how someone's going to answer a question. We might have this phenomenal question that we were so excited to ask, and the person answers it in 30 seconds. What do you do with that? We have to figure out a way to dive into the conversation a little differently than we intended. Sometimes the guest is going to answer a question and it's going to take them 15 minutes to answer it. And that's totally okay, because that's how the journey and the story is meant to be told. So being flexible, just in any sense, not knowing how things are going to go according to plan, because they're not. Sometimes they're just not. That's the mindset that we try to weave in as we then dovetail into storytelling. So, Steph, in your therapy world, I know that the conversations and the stories that we've told over the years have played a huge influence in you wanting to go down into this path of your career. So how do you approach storytelling through this medium, but also with the therapist mindset?
Yeah, in everything. So yeah, as she was alluding to, I started doing this. I've done a million other things in my career thus far, but through this and through other parts of it, through my own songwriting, through the way I was getting into that, these moments of connection, of having people tell their stories always felt like the most important thing I should be doing at any given moment. And that is how I ended up then, well, a longer journey, but now I'm a therapist. So I think the main thing is that what I think is pragmatic about understanding story as it relates to leadership, as it relates to just being a human being in the world, is that reality is made up of stories. And there is objective reality, of course, that's going on. But what we tell ourselves about that reality, the stories we are living out, affect how we relate to the world. And so my grandpa had a great way of saying this, that every head is a new world. And in therapy speak, we call that entering the client's worldview. For that little bit that we're there with them, and in our podcast interviews, we are there entering the head of that person. So whatever their reality is, we're along for the ride and we're just soaking it up. And so all that to say, as a leader and as someone trying to just relate to other human beings, you don't have to accept that other reality as the objective reality. You can disagree with it, but in that moment, when you've taken the time to build someone's context, get into their worldview, you can then know, I kind of picture it like the Matrix a little bit, right? Like, oh, they might be really defensive about this. Maybe I'll phrase it this way. This person is really passionate about this. If I, maybe nudge them this way in their career path or open that door, then that could be huge for this person I either manage or I work with, kind of thing. So I think it's just really pragmatic in terms of how we relate to other humans when we can understand that no matter if it's real or not, everybody's reality, the stories they tell, are dictating how they relate to the world around them. So that's just my wonderful soapbox about that. But then the way we do that, though, is that we need to cultivate a curious mindset and stay humble with that. In therapy, we call that countertransference. When you're entering someone's worldview and something hits something in you that goes like, oh, I don't like that, that takes you out of their worldview and you aren't able to kind of go along for the ride with that. And so if we're able to be curious and be like, interesting, that is their perspective, this is their reality, and kind of keep that in a way separate, that helps us be in a place where we can hear that reality, can enter that worldview and be there. And I think too, it helps us know to ask. I know Julia's getting into something later about listening with this, but wanting to take the time to listen to someone's story, that's huge. And it helps to know that that will help you long run to do that, help your coworker, help your employee, help your friend. But to even start doing that, you have to care and be curious, knowing that that's a good way to be and a productive way to be. So curiosity for the whole person, curious mindset, stay humble with that, know when it's letting something go in you, realizing, oh, this is their reality and I still can work with that. Another part of that is that telling someone's story, someone telling their story, is incredibly therapeutic. My main school of therapy thought that I really love and come from is called narrative therapy, which is literally storytelling as healing. And that kind of holds that moving a story from here, everything bouncing around, to here, actually expressing it in some way, whether it's speaking, whether it's song, whether it's writing, that helps you make the meaning of it. You are then constructing A to Z, how this happened, your place in the world, everything. As I said, everything is a story. Giving the gift to let someone tell it is huge for them knowing who they are and how they relate to the world and stuff. And so I think other than the fact that this is really productive and really wonderful to do, it makes me think of all the interviews. We've done a lot of interviews lately where folks have had really long tenures at companies and they've grown within them and kind of spidered around their curiosity following different ways. And the way that we get these long careers like that in companies that we're around is when companies and leaders are curious, when they make it so that the person can show up and say, hey, I know I'm on the factory floor right now, but I'm really curious about sales. Like maybe I'll go that way, and letting it be open to seeing where the story is going to unfold and not just about a person in a role, like seeing that human and then being able to see where they'll go. And that is how you get a long-term employee. And at the same time, too, it makes me think of another one we do. Anna DeBryan has talked about this beautifully in her podcast interview about telling your story also frees everybody else who might live that story, parts of it, to then be that, right? Like you can see it to be it. And so telling your story is powerful for everybody else around you. And so it's kind of this whole interrelated web of just pragmatically knowing storytelling is key to understanding the human beings around you. And the way that you do that is kind of be curious, help get it out. And I've been thinking a lot as well about how active it's kind of listening as well. But in the podcast interview, when I'm in the therapy room, you're also keeping an eye for what you can pull out about that story and kind of nudging them along. It's a really active role. Yeah, it's like weaving that thread of it all. And so I think storytelling has incredibly wide applications to being a good leader. And it's, again, just pragmatic good stuff. But I love it with all of my heart as an artist and a therapist. So from that too, the perfect bookend to that is then listening, right? Part of the telling the story is one thing, but then the receiving it and the listening is then the final piece of this puzzle. And so Julia, I love how you phrase that you are a professional listener, all that stuff. Can you walk us through from the technological side, how that looks for you, but then how that can be transferred to extra technological in the outside world part of that?
For sure. So I started referring to myself as a professional listener, honestly, partially as a joke, because to people who are outside the industry, when I'm asked, what do you do for work? I found myself pause and think, okay, which thing do I say first? I write songs and I produce them, and I'm a mix engineer and I edit this podcast. And so I started realizing saying I'm a professional listener is really full encompassing into all of these different roles and all of these different hats that I wear. And the more that I thought about it, the more I realized how much listening I do and how much I have been growing that as a skill and a tool. And I've been thinking about this concept of listening for a while, and the three of us have been having conversations around it. And when we were planning our session, I said, hey, I would really love to talk about listening. And our team is fantastic. These ladies are the same on camera as they are off camera. And so they were like, please share the thing, share about being a professional listener. And so as we talk about what listening really is, I want to just throw some ideas at you. So listening, is it just the part that's not talking in a conversation? A little more than that, right? Listening is active. It's engaging. It's something that's imperative to grow for every area of your life if you want to lead and have any kind of influence. Listening is a skill you're going to have to lean into. And so when I'm thinking about listening in terms of music, one of the first things I thought of was ear training. Has anyone here taken music theory? Raise your hands. Okay.
I have PTSD. Why are you doing this to me?
Maybe I should have given a trigger warning. I'm talking about music theory here, guys. Ear training in music theory is basically the skill of hearing an interval, a set of rhythms, a melody, and then translating that into sheet music. So you're hearing, identifying, and then making sense of it. And so that's a skill that most people don't just wake up knowing how to do. That's a skill that you learn. You do ear training drills. You listen to that perfect fourth until you've got it down. It takes work. It takes effort. And that's just for ear training. And the more you study that, the more you realize if that's just one section of music, how much more can I grow and develop in how I hear and how I interpret my sonic environment? I have so much to learn and grow in. And so when we take that same skill into conversations and into the workplace, how can we apply that? So some of the tools that I've been using to better develop my ears for my conversational ear training, if you will, is I ask myself a couple questions and I think through, what is it I'm hearing? What am I listening for? In conversations, it's what is the word choice? Is it formal? Is it informal? What's the pitch? Is it questioning? Is it serious? What about the tone? Am I hearing stress in the person's voice? Is it really excited and engaged? So just by listening, you're getting so much more information than just the words. And then what is the big idea being presented to you? What is your interpretation of that? And then how can you add value based upon all of that information? So the way that I utilize those skills in the workplace is in songwriting. I'm listening for the lyrics. I'm thinking, does the cadence make sense? If there's a metaphor, is that consistent throughout the entire song? So for example, in my song Trust, which came out today, I use this metaphor of, thank you, that's very kind. I use this metaphor of how trusting is really taking a step, not knowing where you're going to land, but believing you're going to be okay, believing that you're not alone. And if you want to reach your goals, if you want to see your dreams actually happen, you have to trust. You have to take that step. And so that metaphor is really consistent throughout the whole song, but I have to go through and I have to edit and make sure it actually is consistent. When I'm mixing, I'm listening for, okay, what is the relationship between the lead vocal and the piano? Are there decisions that I can make to better enhance that? Can I make that more clear? Maybe there's something that I should actually, in production, maybe I should take that out. Even though it's really cool, maybe it actually makes more sense without it. And maybe I put it back in to build a little bit more excitement later. And in podcast editing, I'm listening so carefully, not just to the words, because I will take that audio scalpel and I will cut away everything that's not necessary so that the listeners get the very best highlights. and it's very clear, but I'm listening for the cadence of the person's voice. And that's something that I've learned in doing dialogue editing, is that each and every one of us, we all have our own natural way of talking and our own cadence. And so when we're listening back to that on the podcast, if I just start cutting away, I might lose some of that. And so to best reflect the person speaking, I want to make sure that I'm keeping that natural cadence, because maybe you've experienced this. When you're listening to someone speak, you can almost sense when they're going to talk and when they're going to pause, because it's a rhythm just naturally in our bones when we're talking to one another. It's really cool. And so when I'm listening to a pause, I'm thinking, is that rhythmically in tune with how they speak? Is that pause distracting where I should shorten it? But maybe that pause helps the listener lean into what was just said before. And so sometimes I will just start to cut away and think, no, I need to leave that there because what they said was really good and people need to hear it. Think about it for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it makes me think too, right, of like allowing space. We don't need to fill everything. And that's a whole thing that has drilled into us when we learn to be therapists, of allow a pause, like to a point where maybe sometimes you're uncomfortable and you have to be okay with it. But there is a point where you need to allow something to land exactly how you're saying. And we have to do that for our people, like not just immediately rush in to finish something or to fix something, you know? That's beautiful.
Totally. And so in all of these different roles that I'm doing in the music industry, all of them have to do with taking inventory of what I'm hearing, making sense of it, and then making decisions based upon what I've listened to. That's the workflow of everything that I do in the music industry. And that's also things that I incorporate in my personal life. And so a question I want to encourage each and every one of us to keep in the back of our minds during the show, but also after the show, is to, in every conversation, ask yourself, based upon what I'm hearing, how can I add value? Based upon what I'm hearing, how can I add value? Let that question guide the conversation. Think about it. Listening is one of those things that's really cool, because it's a skill that uniquely gives you the ability to be both effective and empathetic. And those two things are imperative for anyone that wants to be a good leader. You have to be both effective and empathetic. And listening gives you the tools to do both. And so just to show you a little bit of the effect that listening can have, I want you to think of the last conversation you had where you left thinking to yourself, I just don't feel heard. I just don't feel like they heard me. I think we can all relate to that experience, right? Doesn't feel good, but I want to just stay here for one moment. Think about what it was in that conversation that lent itself to you feeling that way. Did they give you any time to talk? Were you just consistently interrupted? Maybe there was an assumption made that was not what you were trying to communicate, that you didn't have a chance to clarify. My guess is at least one of those things, if not all of those things, happened. And so if we know the negative effects of not being heard and not being listened to, how much more is it important that we choose to listen? And we choose to make sure the person that we're talking with never experiences that when they have a conversation with us. That's a hard thing to do. And I'm still learning that. We're still learning that. And we're going to mess up. We're going to have moments where we think back and say, I should learn from that. But we can choose to incorporate listening. We can choose to be thinking of how can I add value to this conversation, to this person, to this experience. Maybe that value is not talking at all and just letting them share what they need to say. Because feeling heard is not just an emotion, it's a response to being listened to. So I want you to take time this show and after the show to ask yourself, based upon what I'm hearing, how can I add value? And see the difference you're able to make and the influence you're able to grow just by choosing to listen.
Beautiful, Julia. My God.
She's a wise one. She's a wise one.
The wisest. And to add to that on the listening side, with Steph and I, we have to actively listen throughout the interview as well, right? We have to understand how the story is flowing. And if, again, going back to the flexibility aspect of it. But one of the things that we've really learned between the two of us, which I'm so grateful that we got to do it this way around and not the other way, is when we first started, the platform that we were using, yes, the podcast is audio only, but the recording platform that we were using was audio only. So we had to rely on listening with each other and our guests and sensing if something felt off, if we needed to go down a different road because our point wasn't landing the way that we wanted to land. And Steph and I, because we were in our respective closets recording in different states and different time zones, had to really rely on this secret silent language between the two of us to make sure that we were showing up and doing the best job that we can to tell the story of the guests that we had. And it's so incredibly important.
Yeah, and it makes me think too with listening how we are so lucky to have done these 71 interviews, right? Learn from 71 incredible women in our industry. Every time you listen, you learn. And so trying to think of who do I need to listen to more? Who can I surround myself with? Who can I ask these questions? Whose story can I listen to? Because it only just makes you better. And I think it doesn't insinuate that you aren't already a good leader. It means that you are probably a great leader if you know that you need to never stop listening to people. So we're just so lucky to have listened to it, and everybody that listens to it, right? We all get to learn from these women. So it's huge.
I love it. Well, as we begin to wrap up, we believe the new generation of leaders have to carve a space to let people be heard, to let people believe their opinions have weight, and that they themselves inherently have weight and value and meaning.
And on that, right, the person that takes the time to know their people and who they're speaking to, do your research, know what head you're talking to, enter that worldview, be curious about it, know that that's also just a wonderful way to be in the world, another human being, and that it is just very effective as a way to lead people and to work with people. And as Julia says, influences and empowers by listening. Just that concept, right, of the most influential people in your life are the ones that truly listen to you. So you can be that for other people as well. It's a huge gift.
I love it. One of the very first questions when we started the podcast, someone asked me, what if you run out of women? We're not going to. There are so many stories that have yet to be told. Everyone's story in this room, in this convention center, from Hall E to the arena, every single story matters. And it's our job to help amplify and give them the platform to do that. So, no, we're not going to run out of women. If anything, it just shows that more women are doing incredible freaking things. Hello. So, with that, thank you all so much for coming. We are going to open for questions in a moment, but ReVoicing the Future airs on the second Tuesday of every month on all major streaming platforms. Subscribe, do the things. Also follow Women of NAMM on Instagram. And with that, I'm Natalie.
I'm Steph.
And I'm Julia.
And we're ReVoicing the Future one interval at a time.
Thank you so much.
And with that, do we have any questions? All right, right here in the front row.
Yeah.
All right.
Y'all have been so wonderful, too. Thank you for being a supportive front row. I'm very grateful for you.
My question is, when you're listening to storytelling, you're hearing these things with people that you know previously, right? From other avenues, other personal points of your life. How do you stay objective when you're listening to these things?
That's a
really
great
good question.
I think it's kind of like compartmentalization. Like, what role are you showing up in that moment? So in the podcast thing, we are the hosts of this podcast right then. There are moments when it's acceptable to be like, oh, I'm also your pal. And then you can kind of flex into that. But I think being solid in how you are relating in that moment tends to be what I do. Do you all have any other thoughts?
Also, yes, sometimes there are friends and right, we build our networks and we make those connections, but they're also equally as nervous. Sometimes they're just like, I don't really think my story has that much value. Yes, it does. And being that safe space for them, knowing that they know us in that sense makes it a little bit more comfortable for them to just feel like that they can drop that wall. So it's just like a balancing out, like Stephanie said.
I think too, what's good about this though is that we don't really actually even have to be, because we are ourselves doing this. Like there is very much the role, but it's not like when I'm with someone as a therapist that I'm that, you know, like it's very much I get to be Steph in however ways I know you. It's just I know I'll bracket however much I'm sharing of that in that moment, if that makes sense. Yeah, good question. Very good question. I had to think about that.
That's fantastic. Do we have any other questions? We got time. Oh, right over here.
Thank you. Hi. I wanted to say specifically for Julia, congratulations on the release.
Thank you so much. Cool. Thank you.
And I myself am an artist, and I'm kind of curious as to how you kind of were able to get people to listen to you and what strategies you had for people to listen to you and your artist story, and getting that recognition and getting put out there.
That's a wonderful question. I try and be really intentional with what I say. And that's something that is, yes, a part of my artist life, but also just a part of me being Julia. And so I try and when I say something that has weight behind it. And so I don't feel the need to comment on everything because I don't always have something to say. And I think that people appreciate that because it's genuine. And so my advice to you would be, think about what it is that you are passionate about and what is it that you feel really led to comment on. What are the things that really make you want to be like, they have to know about this? For me, it's listening. That's something that I could just keep talking about because I'm super passionate about. So my advice would be, what is that for you? What is that thing that has so much spark and passion that you think people need to know about it? Do your research, and then there's your platform. You're welcome.
Oh,
great
beautiful.
question.
Great question.
Hi there. I have two questions. So the first question is, you mentioned earlier in the talk that it's really effective to leave some space and pause when you're listening to people. What are some of your methods to incorporate that into conversations? That's the first question. And then two, what are some of your favorite questions to ask people?
Great question. I think for the pause, well, do you have a thought on that for that, or should I go into therapist mode?
For the pause, when I'm editing, I will listen to it maybe once or twice, a few times, and then I will really go off of what feels right as the listener, because there's a set amount of time where you listen to it and think, is everything okay? Why is there a long pause? And then there's a set amount of time where you listen to it and think, ooh, now that was a good point. And I try and find the balance of putting myself in the mindset of the listener and not just the editor helps me with that.
I also want to add too, after she delivers the episode back to us, I'm re-listening to the episode as well to make sure that things still line up properly. But sometimes, and there's a really good example, we interviewed Jessie Osborne from Spicer's Music, and she had this really great quote that I can't think of off the top of my head about her being a guitar player and her being a musician, essentially. And she had this pause in her statement that I remember so clearly from the interview because we sat with that energy. And I then relayed that back to Julia and said, hey, we need to elongate this pause because the pause added more to the moment than if we got rid of it. It made us stop to think. And in order for it to land properly, we needed to make sure other people stop to think.
I think that's a lot of it. And I think the main thing too is that the main barrier to doing that is our own discomfort with space. So the main thing to cultivate with that is when a silence kind of hangs, it's also just strength of presence to not feel scared by that, to hold yourself back, be so grounded to be like, yeah. And I think it's listening to the conversation, letting it go, but it is also just a lot of attention on the person who's speaking when you can kind of kind of gamify it a little bit. Like, what if I just try this? Let's see if they respond to this, and just let it sit. Like you talk about, like, it's about letting energy land. And if you just look at them in a way where it looks like you aren't zoning out, if you maintain contact and presence with them, they know they're still with you, but it gives them permission to keep going. And oftentimes they'll answer whatever question they have. They'll keep going down a thought rabbit hole. And playing with that too, you can just say things like, or tell me more, or like, yeah, like there's little small word ways to keep nudging, but basically what you're doing is a silent nudge and trying to tamp down your own anxiety about like letting it go. I know it's for me. That's always in all of us, but it's really the first time you do it and someone really does have a light bulb after that, that's when it proves to you like, oh, this was absolutely worth doing and so beautiful to do, and just sprinkling it in as it goes. But it is really a lot about grounding in when you're talking to people. And for favorite questions, I love doing the one of like, what do you like to do outside of work? Who are you outside of this? Like, introduce us to yourself. Like, that's, as Nat said, people light up, and that's really fun.
Because it's also, again, that's what makes them feel the most comfortable and like themselves, right? So when you're asking them to talk about something that they love, that helps them just feel more centered and grounded in that. I think one of my other favorite questions over the years is, we've really been having fun this year with the longevity question that we've been asking, and long tenures at companies and why they stay at companies for 20, 30 years. And hearing that story is so profound, because it's not only a reflection of them and their growth, but it's a reflection on the company that is actively investing in their journey and their growth. And those conversations are equally as important as someone who stays with a company for a few years, goes to another company for a few years, right? Like, that's the trend, especially for younger professionals, is, okay, I'll stay here, then I'll go here, then I'll go there. But talking about that longevity, I've loved it just because there's something there that is worth dissecting.
I also just love tell me the story of. That's,
yeah.
Of course I would, but yeah, that's my bag.
So I think we have time for one more. Oh, look at this, a couple of them.
Nikki.
Hello, my little sisters.
Hi.
First of all, congratulations on 5 years. Been following you the whole time. It's been absolutely amazing. So now that you've interviewed so many women in the industry, then you say like over 70, right?
Yeah.
How has your approach, now that you've been 5 years, how has your approach been to who you're going to find and what you're going to pull out of that person, and what can we expect from all of you in the next couple of years?
That's a loaded question.
The radio host among us. We love it. You're
I
good.
know. Thanks, Mickey. Well, first and foremost, if there is someone that you think has a really awesome story, please come and talk to us. Seriously, because we only know who we know, and we want to know all, and we want to meet all. So please let us know, because we really do take that into consideration. For us right now, we like to continue that flexibility and seeing how the industry is happening and how it's changing, because that then requires us to pivot and focus on maybe an area of the industry that we haven't really talked about. A really good example, we had Michelle Rose on 2 episodes ago, and we talked about AI and how AI is scary, how it can affect women in the workplace, and how we as women can show up and utilize AI in different ways that doesn't feel so scary and daunting. So always keeping our eye a few steps forward. And we also want a mix. Like, we want to talk to people who have maybe started something that supports women in music, and they're in their 30s, or they're in their 20s, or age diversity. If you are doing something impactful.
Or we want it, I guess, is a good way to say that. Yeah. Mixing up who we're hearing from.
Yeah, that's kind of how we look to the future. I hope that answered your question.
Okay. And just more of that. Yeah. Yay. Well, thanks, y'all. Thanks for being great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.